On June 25, 2009, as the sun fell over Los Angeles and the heat rippled across the quiet streets of Holmby Hills, a strange stillness hovered around the mansion at 100 North Carrollwood Drive. Inside, in a dim bedroom with blackout curtains pulled tight and medical equipment arranged in ways no ordinary home should ever contain, the most famous entertainer on Earth lay motionless. Paramedics rushed through the hallway, stepping past frantic voices and the scent of clinical chemicals that did not belong in a private residence. They found him on the bed, skin cool, pulse absent, eyes already slipping into the distance. Outside, the city had not yet realized that a cultural axis was quietly collapsing. Inside, a mystery was unfolding between discarded vials, whispered contradictions, and a timeline that would later be dissected by the world. This was the moment when the king of pop slipped beyond reach, leaving behind unanswered questions that still echo through the corridors of fame. The story begins long before that final day, in the industrial heartbeat of Gary, Indiana, where the Jackson family lived in a cramped house on Jackson Street. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, the ninth child in a household already overflowing with noise, ambition, and hunger. The walls were thin, the floors creaked from constant footsteps, and the air seemed charged with the tension of a family scraping its way through the hard edges of working-class life. Joseph Jackson, a steel mill worker with a rigid jawline and a steelier temperament, ruled the home with a strictness that shaped each of his children. Catherine, quiet yet spiritually anchored, watched over them with a gentleness that tried to soften the edges Joe carved into their lives. Michael grew up in the midst of this push and pull, sensing early the power of approval and the threat of disappointment. Even as a child, he carried an unusual sensitivity beneath his smile, a blend of innocence and alertness that made him both tender and perceptive. Music came to him not as a hobby but as a survival skill. While other children played in the yard, Michael listened to the rhythms rising from the living room where his brothers rehearsed. He mimicked their moves, studying every beat as if decoding a secret language. By the time he was 6, Joe had noticed the spark in him, the way he could command attention without trying, the way his voice rose above the others with a clarity that felt predestined. Under Joe's watch, rehearsals were relentless. The children practiced until their feet ached, until their voices cracked, until perfection became a requirement rather than a goal. Michael learned that talent alone was never enough. Discipline, fear, and ambition became the trinity that shaped his childhood, blurring the line between love and pressure. As the Jackson 5 began performing locally in the mid-60s, Michael's presence on stage was unmistakable. He moved with a fluidity that seemed far beyond his age, spinning, gliding, singing with astonishing control. Audiences watched in disbelief as a child delivered performances full of charisma and emotional weight. His brothers were talented, but Michael was magnetic. The group's rise was swift and transformative. After a series of performances, auditions, and small victories, they landed the opportunity that would change the trajectory of their lives. On July 23, 1968, the Jackson 5 signed with Motown Records, initiating Michael's entry into a world where the spotlight never dimmed. Fame struck early, and it struck hard. Michael was only 11 when I Want You Back was released on October 7, 1969, propelling the Jackson 5 to national stardom. He loved the thrill of performing, the adrenaline of applause, the escape it provided from the complexities inside his home. Yet with every cheer from the crowd, he also lost another piece of the childhood he would spend the rest of his life trying to reclaim. Touring replaced school. Rehearsals replaced playtime. Public expectation replaced personal growth. He was both adored and isolated. A child growing up beneath a magnifying glass, always watched, always judged. As he entered adolescence, Michael's relationship with fame deepened into something both intoxicating and corrosive. He became hyper-aware of his appearance, his voice, his identity. The shy boy with expressive brown eyes began to feel the weight of being the face of a global phenomenon. According to those close to him, he struggled quietly with self-esteem, absorbing criticisms about his nose, his skin, and his looks that lingered for decades. While fans saw a young superstar filled with joy and charisma, behind closed doors he was introspective, sometimes lonely, and increasingly anxious about the expectations placed upon him. The transition from the Jackson 5 to the Jacksons in the mid-70s marked a shift in his artistic journey. On March 16, 1976, the group made their television debut under their new name after leaving Motown, signaling not only a contractual evolution, but a personal awakening for Michael. He began to imagine a future where he wasn't just part of a group, but a singular force, crafting a sound that belonged solely to him. Driven by ambition and an insatiable hunger for creative expression, he started exploring songwriting with greater seriousness. His ideas became more daring, his musical instincts sharper. Yet this independence came with tension, as Joe's influence clashed with Michael's growing desire for autonomy. A pivotal turning point came with the release of his solo album, Off the Wall, on August 10, 1979. It was a masterful blend of disco, funk, and soul, but more importantly, it was a revelation of who Michael truly was as an artist. The album's success was monumental, earning critical praise and international attention. But for Michael, it wasn't enough. When he learned it had not received the Album of the Year nomination at the Grammys, it ignited a fire inside him, a determination to create something so powerful the world could never ignore him again. That disappointment became the seed of a revolution. And then came November 30th, 1982, the day Thriller was released, reshaping not only Michael's destiny, but the entire music industry. It wasn't merely an album, it was an event, it was history. With each track, Michael erased boundaries, fused genres, and elevated pop music into a cinematic experience. The Thriller music video, released on December 2nd, 1983, became a cultural phenomenon, forever altering the landscape of visual storytelling in music. Michael's choreography, particularly the iconic zombie dance, became instantly immortal. He was no longer just a star, he was a global force, a modern myth, a symbol of perfection and innovation. Yet, with extreme success came extreme scrutiny. As the world consumed his art, it also fixated on his appearance. Questions emerged about his changing skin tone, his evolving facial features, and the reasons behind them. Michael insisted he suffered from vitiligo, a claim later supported by medical evidence, but rumors persisted with a cruel intensity. The tabloids began constructing a surreal, distorted image of him, painting him as eccentric, fragile, and strange. He became both the most admired and the most ridiculed man in entertainment, living inside a paradox where he was adored by millions, yet understood by almost no one. The pressure escalated during the late 80s and early 90s. On August 31st, 1987, the album Bad was released, demonstrating his continued dominance in the industry. But behind the scenes, Michael was growing increasingly isolated. His fame had become a cage made of whispers and expectations. He sought comfort in Neverland Ranch, which he purchased on August 18, 1988, envisioning it as a sanctuary of innocence and imagination. The ranch, with its amusement park, animals, and vibrant landscapes, reflected the childhood he felt had been stolen from him. It was both a refuge and a symbol, a place where he tried to rebuild something that had dissolved long ago. But even Neverland could not shield him from the storm that was coming. On August 17, 1993, the first allegations of misconduct emerged, shattering the illusion of safety he had tried so hard to create. The media frenzy was immediate and relentless. Cameras followed him everywhere. Headlines twisted assumptions into narratives. Supporters defended him fiercely, while critics sharpened their knives. Michael found himself thrust into a nightmare that felt both surreal and devastating. According to those close to him, he spiraled into anxiety and insomnia, unable to reconcile the love he had given the world with the hatred suddenly being thrown at him. The investigation eventually ended without charges, but the damage to his public image was irreversible. The emotional toll seeped into his art, his relationships, and his sense of self. He released History on June 20th, 1995, an album that blended confession with defiance, revealing deep wounds beneath the polished exterior. Though celebrated by fans, the darkness in the lyrics hinted at a man wrestling with betrayal, trauma, and the crushing magnitude of public judgment. Michael's marriage to Lisa Marie Presley, which began on May 26, 1994, became another point of fascination and speculation before dissolving on January 18, 1996. His personal life became an open battlefield for narratives he couldn't control. By the early 2000s, Michael's world had grown increasingly fragile. On November 20, 2003, his home was raided in connection with new allegations, igniting yet another media hurricane. The subsequent trial, which began on January 31, 2005, dragged him through one of the darkest chapters of his life. After months of testimony, scrutiny, and emotional turmoil, Michael was acquitted on June 13, 2005, but the victory felt hollow. The psychological scars were deep. Neverland no longer felt like a sanctuary. According to many who knew him, he felt betrayed by an industry he helped build, haunted by accusations he insisted were false, and exhausted by the weight of a world that refused to see his humanity. His later years were marked by financial pressure, health struggles, and an increasing dependence on medications meant to calm his mind and help him sleep. He attempted a comeback with the This Is It concerts, announced on March 5, 2009, a final attempt to reclaim the stage that had once felt like home. Rehearsals began, and despite signs of frailty, those around him noted flashes of the old brilliance. The music still lived inside him, fierce and electrifying, but behind the scenes he was battling a storm only he could feel. A war between ambition and fragility, between hope and exhaustion. That war ended on June 25, 2009, in the dim bedroom of his rented mansion, where the quiet hum of medical devices underscored the final moments of a life that had soared higher and fallen harder than almost any in modern history. The questions surrounding his death would echo for years, drawing attention to the pressures, expectations, and vulnerabilities that had shadowed him from childhood to the end. In the aftermath of June 25, 2009, while sirens echoed beyond the gates of Carrollwood Drive and the world tried to comprehend the loss of its brightest star, the investigation into Michael's final hours revealed a labyrinth of contradictions and fragile truths. The coroner's report, released on August 28, 2009, confirmed propofol intoxication as the cause of death, a clinical phrase that masked the deeper tragedy of a man who had spent a lifetime chasing rest he could never truly find. The case against Dr. Conrad Murray culminated in a conviction on November 7, 2011, but even that judgment failed to quiet the storm of questions that hovered over Michael's final years. It was never just about medicine or mistakes. It was about the unbearable weight of global adoration, the wounds left by decades of scrutiny, and the exhaustion of a soul that had spent too long performing for a world that rarely saw the person behind the myth. To understand the end, one must return to the years when Michael reached artistic heights few could imagine. After the triumph of Thriller, he was no longer competing with other artists. He was competing with himself. Each project became a battle against the limits of possibility. On May 20, 1983, when he performed the moonwalk for the first time during the Motown 25 special, he etched his place into cultural eternity. Audiences watched in disbelief as he glided backward with impossible smoothness, a moment that instantly transformed into legend. Yet even then, behind the curtain, he felt the pressure to innovate again and again, to exceed the expectations that grew heavier with every accolade. The intensity of fame carved deep grooves into Michael's psyche. According to those who worked closest with him, he oscillated between extraordinary confidence and crippling insecurity. while he commanded studios with visionary precision, guiding every note, every beat, every frame. He also battled intrusive fears about aging, relevance, and the relentless gaze of the media. His metamorphosis across the late 80s became a global spectacle, with every change in his appearance dissected and ridiculed. Rumors about surgeries multiplied, overshadowing discussions about his artistry. His vitiligo, first diagnosed in the mid-80s and later confirmed in his autopsy, became a cruel focal point for tabloid narratives that ignored the emotional impact of living with a visible disorder under the scrutiny of millions. As the 90s approached, Michael found refuge in humanitarian work, traveling the world to meet children, visit hospitals, and support charitable causes. On January 31, 1993, he performed at the Super Bowl halftime show, creating one of the most iconic moments in entertainment history. In the eyes of the world, he was at the peak of his influence, but as the applause thundered around him, the shadows were already gathering. The allegations of August 17, 1993, did not simply ignite a scandal. They marked the beginning of a long unraveling of Michael's sense of safety. The investigation dragged on for months, saturating every form of media with speculation. Helicopters flew over Neverland. Reporters camped outside. Friends described him as devastated, confused, and emotionally broken. To cope, he leaned increasingly on medications that had initially been prescribed to help him navigate the physical demands of touring and injuries sustained throughout his career. Over time, these pills became a psychological lifeline, a buffer against fear, insomnia, and memories he struggled to silence. His marriage to Lisa Marie Presley offered a brief period of hope. Their union on May 26, 1994, was met with skepticism, yet for a time, she provided emotional grounding, someone who understood the unique pressures of being raised in the shadow of an icon. But the public scrutiny surrounding their marriage created cracks they couldn't mend, and by January 18, 1996, it dissolved. Michael entered a second marriage with Debbie Rowe on November 14, 1996, leading to the births of his children, Prince on February 13, 1997, and Paris on April 3, 1998. Moments that brought genuine joy into his life. Fatherhood softened Michael in ways few had seen before. He guarded his children fiercely, determined to give them the privacy he had never known. Yet even parenthood could not shield him from the relentless currents pulling at him from every direction. His artistic flame continued to burn despite the turmoil. On October 30, 2001, he released Invincible, a project that became both a triumph and a battleground. It was his last full studio album, a culmination of years of meticulous work. But its release was marred by disputes with his record label, health challenges, and the shifting musical landscape. Although the album achieved commercial success, the industry's changing tides and the lingering scars of past scandals overshadowed its brilliance. The raid on Neverland on November 20, 2003, reopened wounds that had barely begun to heal. The trial that followed pulled Michael into a vortex of global scrutiny, darker than anything he had endured before. Supporters and detractors alike filled the airwaves, transforming his life into a public courtroom drama. The verdict of June 13, 2005 brought relief, but not redemption. Those present said Michael appeared exhausted, drained, and haunted by the ordeal. He retreated from the spotlight, searching for peace in Bahrain, Ireland, and Las Vegas. But everywhere he went, the ghosts of his past followed. Neverland, once his sanctuary, had become a battleground of memories. Financial difficulties forced him to relinquish control of the property on November 10, 2008, a symbolic death of the dream he had built to reclaim the innocence stolen from him. As the years wore on, his circle tightened, filled with advisors, assistants, and medical professionals who were supposed to help, but often contributed to the chaos. Some sources close to him believed he trusted the wrong people, those who saw him not as a person but as a resource, a commodity, a fading empire they could still extract value from. When Michael announced the "This Is It" concerts on March 5, 2009, the world erupted with excitement. Fans who had waited years for his return felt hope ignite once more. Rehearsals began shortly after, revealing glimpses of the unparalleled performer beneath the physical frailty. Footage from these sessions, later released in the film This Is It on October 28, 2009, showed a man still capable of brilliance, still carrying the fire of creativity within him. But the strain on his body was undeniable. Behind the scenes, he relied heavily on medications to sleep, to rehearse, to cope. As the days counted down to the concert premiere, scheduled for July 13, 2009, Michael's internal world grew more fragile. He confided in a few close individuals about fears he couldn't fully articulate. The pressures of the comeback, the weight of expectations, and the exhaustion of decades under the spotlight pressed down on him with unbearable force. According to those present in his final weeks, he struggled visibly, yet continued pushing himself, determined to deliver a show that would silence critics and remind the world of the genius they had forgotten in the noise of scandal. Everything converged into the quiet tragedy of June 25, 2009, when the star, whose voice had shaped generations, lay still in his private room, surrounded not by applause but by shadows. Outside the hospital, crowds began to gather, their grief rising in waves as the news spread. Millions wept, sang his songs, held candles in vigils across continents. In death, the world remembered what it had often forgotten in life. The boy from Gary who had defied gravity, who had given everything to his art, who had created magic in every sense of the word. Yet beneath the mourning lay a deeper complexity. Michael's story was not just about fame, brilliance, and tragedy. It was about the cost of being extraordinary in a world that demands perfection, the wounds inflicted by relentless judgment, and the fragility of a man who carried the weight of global adoration while searching desperately for peace. Because by the mid-1990s, Michael was no longer just a superstar. He was a living myth, a symbol, an industry, a global currency. And myths are not allowed to be human. They cannot bleed, they cannot break, they cannot collapse under the weight of their own brilliance. Yet, Michael did, slowly, silently, and in full view of the world. After the earth-shattering success of Dangerous, the whispers began. Little shadows, little rumors, little storms were gathering under a sky that had always belonged entirely to him. And then, the scandal. A single accusation that lit international news on fire and dragged Michael into a darkness he was never prepared for. For the first time in his life, the boy who ran from pain, the young man who escaped into music, the artist who reinvented himself again and again, had nowhere left to run. He was investigated, humiliated, and cornered. The same media that crowned him the king of pop now devoured him with the hunger of wolves. Tabloids printed lies faster than he could breathe. Reporters camped outside his gates. Every expression, every gesture, every silence was rewritten into suspicion. And Michael broke. Privately, quietly, in ways the world didn't see. His weight dropped, his sleep vanished, his smile, the one that lit stadiums, turned dim and hollow. Friends later said it was the first time they saw fear. In his eyes, real fear over what the world was turning him into. He settled the case to stop the chaos, but the damage was already permanent. Something inside him had shattered, not his innocence but his trust. Still, he tried to rise again. History wasn't just an album, it was a declaration of war, a wounded man standing in the middle of a battlefield, telling the world, "You will not rewrite who I am." And the world listened. The album exploded globally, selling millions and echoing with anger, pride, heartbreak, and resistance. But the pressure, the scrutiny, the isolation, they were slowly carving away at his soul. By the 2000s, Michael was a ghost inside the mansion he built. A man who once danced like he was made of fire, now moved like someone made of glass. Fragile, careful, almost transparent. Lawsuits, health issues, financial stress, endless headlines. Every time he tried to rebuild, the world demanded another piece of him. Yet even then, he never lost the child inside him. He never lost the dreamer who believed in magic. Never lost the boy who grew up too fast and kept trying to reclaim the childhood stolen from him. And then when it felt like the whole world had written him off, Michael decided to rise one last time. A comeback, a resurrection, a return to the throne. This is it. 50 shows, 50 nights, 50 chances to prove he still belonged to the world. Not as a memory, but as a miracle. Rehearsals began, and something extraordinary happened. That old spark, the one buried under years of pain, flickered back to life. His voice strengthened, his dance sharpened, his eyes burned again with purpose. Everyone around him said the same thing. Michael was back, but no one knew what was happening behind the curtain, how exhausted he truly was, how fragile his health had become, or how badly he depended on a doctor who didn't understand the weight of the life he was responsible for. And then came June 25th, 2009, a day that froze the world, a day when radios fell silent, when TVs broke into emergency broadcasts, when millions stood still, refusing to believe history was happening in real time. A day when the boy from Gary, Indiana, the prodigy, the perfectionist, the icon, the myth, took his final breath in a mansion that was supposed to be his rebirth. The king of pop was gone, but his story, his truth, his scars, his magic, they didn't die with him. They became immortal, just like he always was. When Michael Jackson died, the world didn't just lose an artist. It lost a force of nature, a once-in-a-century phenomenon whose shadow stretched across continents, cultures, and generations. The moment the news broke, chaos ignited everywhere. Airports, malls, streets, living rooms, newsrooms. People cried on sidewalks. Radio stations paused their schedules. Entire cities lit up with screens showing only one face. The face that had defined the soundtrack of their lives. But behind the global grief, another story was unfolding, a darker story, a story of responsibility, failure, and the slow destruction of a man who gave too much and received too little. Authorities walked into his rented Holmby Hills mansion and found a scene that didn't look like the home of a legend. It looked like the room of a patient, a man struggling. A man is trying to sleep through unbearable pain. Bottles, vials, medical bags, a doctor who couldn't explain the timeline, a drug that no one should ever use outside a hospital. Propofol, the very medicine meant for surgery rooms, had become the escape. Michael depended on to silence the storms inside his mind, and as investigators dug deeper, a heartbreaking truth surfaced. Michael didn't die in a moment. He died slowly over the years, piece by piece, scandal by scandal, injury by injury, sleepless night by sleepless night. By the time of his comeback preparations, he was fighting two battles, one against his own body and one against a world that still demanded perfection from him. The trial that followed became a global spectacle. Doctors testified, experts argued, fans protested outside the courthouse, and inside, a single question echoed. Could Michael Jackson have been saved? The answer was yes. But no one saved him. He was too valuable, too famous, too iconic. Everyone wanted something. Money, access, credit, power. And in the middle of all that noise, the man himself disappeared. The court declared his doctor guilty of involuntary manslaughter. But the deeper truth didn't end there. Because the system that surrounded Michael, the pressure, the expectations, the exploitation, that system never went on trial. And maybe it never will. Yet even in death, Michael continued doing what he always did. He broke records, his music sales exploded, his videos went viral again. His name dominated every platform, every chart, every country. It was as if the world finally realized what it had lost. and tried desperately to pull him back through memory. Concerts were held. Tributes poured in. Artists from every corner of the industry acknowledged the same thing. There will never be another Michael Jackson. There cannot be another Michael Jackson. The world isn't built to create legends like him anymore, because Michael wasn't just a talent. He was visionary, he was obsessed, he was a sacrifice, he was the price of greatness paid in full. But most of all, he was love. A broken boy who spent his entire life trying to heal the world while no one healed him. And that is the tragedy that echoes through his legacy. Today, more than a decade later, his influence is everywhere. In the way artists dance, in the way concerts are staged, in the storytelling of music videos. On a global scale of pop culture itself, Michael didn't just perform music. He reshaped the architecture of fame. He reprogrammed the language of entertainment. He defined what it means to be a superstar in the modern world. But behind all the gold records, the sold-out tours, the historic awards, the impossible achievements, there is still the boy from Gary, Indiana. A boy who wanted to sing, a boy who wanted to dance, a boy who wanted to feel safe, a boy who spent 50 years trying to escape the weight of a world that wouldn't let him rest. And in the end, he found rest only when the world let go. Michael Jackson's life was brilliance, carved from pain, a masterpiece painted with shadows and light, echoing forever through the hearts of those who grew up with his magic. He didn't just leave a legacy, he left a blueprint, a mystery, a myth, a memory that refuses to fade. Because legends don't die, they rise again and again, every time the world presses play.